It was the summer of 1989. Chicago. A movie set on the outskirts of the city in a rented suburban home that had been transformed into a soundstage. The film was called Uncle Buck. The director was John Hughes, the same man who had given the world The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller and 16 Candles. He was, at that moment, the most successful director of family films in America. And on the second day of shooting, a small boy walked through the front door of the set with his father. He was 8 years old. He had a soft, round face with two enormous front teeth that had not yet grown in completely. His hair was a pale blonde, almost colorless under the studio lights. He weighed 64 pounds. He was wearing sneakers that were a size too big for him because his mother believed in buying shoes a child could grow into. His name was Macaulay Culkin. He had been acting since he was 4 years old. His father had pushed him into auditions before he could read. By the time he walked onto the Uncle Buck set, he had already appeared in commercials, in television shows, in 2 small films. He was a working actor, a union member, a child with an agent. And he was terrified, because his father was standing right beside him. In 1989, no one outside the Culkin household knew very much about Christopher Culkin, the man who would later be remembered, in his own son's words, as a monster. The world only knew Kit Culkin as a stage father, a man who appeared in the background of photographs, smiling thinly, his hand resting on a small shoulder. But the people on that set could see things. There are things you can see on a film set that a camera will never catch. The way a child flinches when an adult moves too quickly. The way a small body becomes still, unnaturally still, when a particular voice enters a room. Macaulay Culkin would later say that his father in 1989 was already a monster. That this was true before the wave crested, before Home Alone made him the most famous child in the world. The crew saw it, the makeup artists saw it, the lighting technicians saw it, and not one of them said a word. Into this world on the 3rd day of shooting walked John Candy. He was 38 years old. He stood 6 feet, 2 inches tall and weighed close to 300 pounds. He had the kind of face that seemed designed by some ancient artist for the express purpose of making people smile. Soft jowls, small bright eyes hidden in folds of laughter, a mustache that twitched whenever he was about to deliver a joke. He arrived on set the way he arrived everywhere, loud, late, carrying coffee, apologizing. The crew brightened the moment they saw him. People who had been silent and sullen for 2 days suddenly remembered how to laugh. The lighting guys started telling stories. The makeup artists started teasing each other. A film set, when John Candy walked into it, became a kinder room. There is a thing about certain people, a thing that has nothing to do with talent or fame or money. It is something animals notice. It is something children notice before adults do. Some people walk into a room and the room becomes safer. Some people walk into a room and the room becomes colder. We have no scientific name for this, but every human being on Earth knows instinctively the difference. John Candy was a man who made rooms safer, and on that day in Chicago in the summer of 1989, an 8-year-old boy felt it. Macaulay Culkin would later say very simply, "You felt invited in." That was all. You felt invited in. For a child who spent most of his waking hours bracing for impact, a child whose home life was a series of doors he was afraid to open, those 4 words contain an entire universe of meaning. That afternoon, in between takes, Candy did something that crew members would later describe as routine. Though for the boy, it was not. He came over to the corner of the set where Macaulay was sitting, a script open on his lap, his small feet not quite reaching the floor. He sat down beside him. He did not crouch, the way adults often crouch when they are pretending to take a child seriously. He sat, the whole weight of him on a child-sized folding chair that creaked under him, his enormous shoulders leveling with the boys. And he said, "Hey kid, how you doing?" It was not a script line. It was a question, and it was the first time in a long time that anyone had asked Macaulay Culkin that question and waited for an answer. The shoot lasted 6 weeks. For 6 weeks in the summer of 1989, the boy and the big man developed a routine that no one wrote down. No one filmed it. No one made a press release about it. It was so quiet, so ordinary that most of the crew did not even notice it was happening. Every morning when Macaulay Culkin arrived on set, John Candy was already there. He had a coffee in his hand for himself and a small carton of orange juice for the boy. He would put the orange juice down at the corner of the craft services table, the same corner every day, and he would wait until the boy noticed it. He never said, "This is for you." He never made a thing of it. The orange juice was just there. If the boy did not come to claim it within an hour, John Candy would casually drift over and drink it himself, so the gesture would never feel like an obligation, so the boy would never feel watched. But the boy noticed. In between takes, Candy would sit down beside him. He would tell him jokes. He would teach him how to play poker with a deck of cards he kept in his pocket. He would do impressions, terrible impressions, ridiculous impressions, the kind of impressions that are so bad they become wonderful. Until the small boy, who almost never laughed, would put his head down on the table and laugh until he was breathless. Macaulay would later remember Candy this way, in his own words. He was always really kind and really good. He showed a lot of respect. And then more quietly he added, "When you're 8 years old, you don't really get respect, whether it's in a workplace or just from adults and grown-ups in general. You felt invited in." There it was again. You felt invited in. A door opening, a chair being pulled out, a small carton of orange juice sitting in the corner of a table. These are the things that make a room safe, not speeches, not grand declarations, not the things adults remember to say at funerals. The small things, the orange juice, the chair, the waiting. These are how love is shaped when it is shaped for a child. When Kit Culkin entered the room, John Candy did not say anything. He did not confront him. He did not lecture him. He did not, in any visible, dramatic, made-for-the-movies way, intervene. He simply moved. He moved his enormous body slowly until he was standing between the man and the boy. He would lean against a wall. He would adjust his shirt. He would call out to a crew member about a lighting question, and his 300-pound frame would somehow always end up exactly in the line of sight between Kit Culkin and his son. The boy noticed this too. He was 8 years old, and he was beginning to understand something that took most adults their whole lives to learn. That love sometimes is not a speech. It is a body placed quietly between you and the thing that is trying to hurt you. To understand why John Candy did this, when no one else did, you have to understand something John Candy never talked about. He had been a small boy himself once. He was born in Newmarket, Ontario in 1950. His father, Sidney, was a used car salesman, a quiet man, a gentleman, a man who had been born with a heart condition and who had been told when he was still young that he would not live to see old age. When John Candy was 5 years old, his father came home from the car lot one evening. He sat down in his favorite chair. He closed his eyes. He was 35 years old. He never opened his eyes again. The boy who would grow up to make the entire world laugh learned at the age of 5 what it felt like to walk into a living room and find that your father was not coming back. He carried this with him. He carried it into every film he made, into every joke he told, into every late-night phone call where friends would tell him their problems and he would listen for hours without ever mentioning his own. Steve Martin would later say, "He never wanted to be a burden." Eugene Levy would later say, He thought he was living on borrowed time. Catherine O'Hara would later say simply, "He always knew. He always knew. He knew that fathers could disappear. He knew that children could be abandoned in ways that had nothing to do with a funeral. He knew what it felt like to be small, in a room full of adults, and to be invisible to all of them." And so, on a movie set in Chicago, when an 8-year-old boy walked through the door with a man who was supposed to be his father, John Candy did not need anyone to explain anything to him. He understood immediately. On the 4th of March, 1994, 5 years after the Uncle Buck shoot ended, John Candy was working on a film in Durango, Mexico. He was 43 years old. That night, after a long day of filming, he went back to his rented house. He cooked himself a small dinner. He called his wife Rose in California. He told her he loved her. He told her he was tired. He went to bed. He did not wake up. The cause of death was a heart attack. He was exactly the same age his father had been when his father died. The boy in Chicago, the boy who by then had become the most famous child in the world, was 13 years old when the news came on the television. He did not say anything. He did not cry. He simply turned off the television, walked into his bedroom, and closed the door. What he thought in that bedroom, what a 13-year-old boy thinks when he learns that the only adult who ever protected him is gone, no one will ever know. He has never described it. In 31 years, he has not spoken about it publicly, not in interviews, not in podcasts, not in his memoir. Some grief is too private to share, but here is what we do know. In 2025, when a documentary filmmaker named Colin Hanks asked him to talk about John Candy on camera, to remember the man who had once made him laugh until he could not breathe, Macaulay Culkin agreed. He flew to Toronto. He sat down in front of the lights. He took a long breath, and he finally, after 31 years, said the words, "I remember John caring," he said, "when not a lot of people did. It doesn't happen that often. It actually happened less as time went on. I wish I got more of that in my life. It's important that I remember that a single act of kindness witnessed by a single small child can outlive the man who performed it by 31 years and echo quietly into rooms he will never walk into for the rest of time." If this story moved you, please subscribe. Every week, a new untold story. Until then, be gentle with each other. The world is shorter than we think.